Aviation Museum and our monthly Hangar Talk. For those of you who have been here before, you know I always start out with, and there's only one word for it, I'm the commercial. I'll then introduce our speaker. As we've done in the past, he's kindly agreed to, after his talk, to do questions and answers. And I will bring this high-quality microphone to you so that the whole audience can hear your question. If you don't do that, what did he say? What did she say? So just raise your hand once we start the question and answer period, and I'll bring you the mic. Bear with me for commercials. It's actually a pretty good list. September 16th, sounds like next Friday, we have an art show here in the center section where the air conditioning works. September 24th and 25th, 2 weekends, the radio controlled event will be here. I saw somebody taking photographs. Also on September 24th is Proptoberfest. There are excellent flyers out there to explain it. I'm not going to take your time because some people are interested in it, some aren't. So it does a great job of explaining it. October 1st is the, it's hard for me to say this, I'm a Corvette guy, is the Porsche car show. October 7th and 9th is the big, what I call the World War I air show, biplanes and triplanes. And October 15th is Wings and Wheels. If you're interested in car shows, that's the one that was canceled because that lady came and visited us a couple weekends ago. And we didn't want to have all those expensive machines rained on. Mr. Zook's is our normal caterer. They have a wedding in the family today. The Seacrest restaurant folks are here as catering. They are superb. So if after the talk, if you want a bite to eat or a full lunch, please see them. The neatest part about this job is I get to meet gentlemen like him. Lieutenant Col Wayne Porter, B-24 Bombardier. I'm not going to take a bit of his story away, but you're going to be amazed. Colonel Porter, the audience is yours, sir.
Thank you. Usually don't start out this way, but since we have so much activity this weekend, I would like to take just a few moments of silence in honor of those that were lost in that. That's in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. If you would, please. I thank you. I feel it a real privilege to be able to talk to you folks in passing on my experience as a prisoner of war in World War II. Now, as you know, we're all getting older. It's not going to be many years from now. If you want to know about anything that's what happened with POWs in World War II, you're going to have to read it in the book, because we're going to be gone. In World War II, there was about 130,000 prisoners of war. Of that group, about 126 of them were in Europe, and of that group, pretty near 100 of them were Air Force people. And so we've moved on, and we've lost a bunch. At the present time, the National World War II POW group are starting to think about closing down, because our membership has fallen down to now. It's estimated there's only about 10,000 in the whole country. So based on that information and a little bit of sideline, I'll move ahead. I came out of high school, graduated in 1941, too young to get in service, so I wouldn't be 18 until December, so I had to hang around. But in 42, the Army opened up the applications for high school graduates who could pass the examination, the mental examination to get into the Air Force, which was set on those people who had 2 years of college. Well, it was on a dare from a friend of mine. We went and took the test because I had taken a business course through high school, hadn't taken any of the advanced courses, the sciences or the advanced math, and I figured I didn't stand a chance. However, he convinced me to go take the test, and I made it. I moved on from there, waiting assignment, and in February of 43, I received assignment to go into the cadet training. I moved through the initial cadet introductions, pre-flight and what have you, and I was assigned then to bombardier training. Moved on to pre-flight school for bombardiers, advanced school. The next thing I know, I was in the West Coast as a crew member of the B-24. Our crew was made up of people from all over the country, and I will say we were a good crew. We stuck together and worked as a real good team. Went from there overseas and joined the 456th Bomb Group in Italy. I'm going to point out that while we were going overseas, we landed in Memphis, Tennessee. They had a terrific thunderstorm and storm through that evening, and every airplane out at the airfield had to be sent in to repair because the control surfaces were all canvas and the hail had shredded it, so they lined them up for repair. And our ship got towards the tail end, so I spent 19 days in Memphis. We moved on then, down through South America, jumped across, landed in North Africa, and in Morocco. And we had a rest over there because one day over there because the line had backed up. In other words, these aircraft moving in as replacements as they moved along. It's almost like the accordion move out here on 64. And so we were waiting. We went out, finally got to go ahead. We went out, and we had gasoline leaking into the bomb bay. Now, this created a little concern because that aircraft was equipped with puncture-proof gas tanks. Why would one be leaking? Well, they hunted and hunted and hunted until they finally found a connector in one of the tanks from tank to tank on the outer wing. But here again, we were another 19 days. We finally made it into the combat area in the middle of May and immediately signed up, flew a couple practice missions the pilots did, and then we were off on our missions over Europe. Covering that, I flew missions from France, Germany, Northern Italy, Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece, Yugoslavia. So I covered pretty much the waterfront. On the 4th of October, they decided to let us visit them. Went to Munich, and we had finished our bomb run. However, our crew and our group was leading the division. We had aircraft formations on the right and the left of us, so we dropped, but we couldn't rally from the target. And after getting some pretty severe hits coming down the bomb run, we had to stay straight and level until the others had dropped theirs. And the next thing you know, we were hitting the bomb bay. We started burning in the oxygen and gasoline, said, get out of here. So the pilot waggled off the formation so that they would not follow him. And we pulled up and started out of the formation. With a wing high attitude, and we had cleared the formation. we got another hit in the nose area of the bird. Well, that cut all the control cables and everything, and so it was just a free-falling piece of, or whatever. And it started into a flat spin, and that is one of the worst you can get into because of the centrifugal force. Now, the Navigator and the two waist gunners, who were sitting by escape hatches to begin with, they got out of the bird early. Matter of fact, the Navigator said later he was floating there and saw that thing going round and round, and he was wondering if it was going to miss him or hit him coming down. But the pilot got out a little bit later, and I was pinned in the nose, and knowing that, please, we're getting close, had the one wing through the fire and everything was weakened, and when it collapsed, it created enough lift on the other side of the airplane that it broke the spin momentarily, and I went flying. The nose gunner came out right behind me. Unfortunately, his parachute had just started to stream when he hit the ground. I had made 2 oscillations with my chute when I hit the ground, so I would say I got out of the airplane about 600 feet. Well, I looked around, pilot and he came down, he hollered at me, and I waited for him to land. We saw a grove of trees, and so we said, well, let's head over there and see if we can hide out and see what we can do, get our bearings. Well, about 20 yards from the grove, oh, there's 2 Germans standing there, one with a rifle and one with a pistol. And I'll tell you now, the ammunition's only about as big as your little finger. But when you're looking at it, it's about that big. And so we stopped, and I'm not sure whether he was an officer or an enlisted man, but the leader with the pistol, he came over, and in very good English, for you, the war is over. It was stupid. Now these troops come from the Black Battery, and when we walked through that wooded area, on the other side was a 6-gun anti-aircraft set. And so I've always said that's like if you were a nerd and went hunting and shot a duck and it fell in your boat. That was what happened to us. And whether their guns did it or not, they were sure they had us. We were their trophy. We sat there for a few minutes, waiting for transportation to haul us away. And without any German artillery, I convinced the guard who was guarding us to let me get a candy bar out of our escape kit. And he okayed it, and I broke the tape and wrapped it, and kind of fumbled around a bit. He became a little bit agitated, wanted me to hurry up. Well, I wanted him to look away because I was really going for the 6 gold coins that were in that escape kit. But he was wise to that, so I ended up, they took the gold coins. They took us into the prison there at the airfield in Munich. And that evening, they took us out, and we were headed north. We had no idea where we were going or what we were doing, but we picked up a group, and we must have had 20 to 25 people in this group, and a half a dozen German guards, and they put us on this train, and away we went. We traveled all night with one stop where we could get off, and there was a Red Cross there at the depot, and so they offered us some soup and a drink. And the drink was the ersatz coffee that they made during the war. And it wasn't very plentiful, but later on it got to taste pretty good. We went on, we arrived in Frankfurt, Germany, and well, I've been through Frankfurt since then, but that day, you talk about rubble. That station, the Bahnhof, was just nothing but broken glass and windows and everything. and unhappy people. And the city of Frankfurt had really been plastered up to this time. And the people were very unhappy, and I wish we'd had about 20 guards instead of the 6 that we had. But they didn't get to us, and they took us down to the station, put us on a trolley car, and took us out to the outskirts of Frankfurt, which is Oberursel. That is the Air Force Interrogation Center. So there we go. Once we arrived there, we were split up. We didn't have any contact with any of our crew members or any other American prisoner while we were there. The only people we had contact with was our interrogation officer and the guard that took us back and forth from our cells to his office. I think it was the second, I've lost the dates there, but I think it was the second day. It was my first trip in with the interrogator. And he started out, which is their normal interrogation. Lieutenant Porter, if you are Lieutenant Porter, we have a few questions we need to get answered. And so he started asking questions. And I gave him name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. And it didn't matter what he asked me, I gave him name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. Well, the first interrogation didn't go over so good. After, I would say, 5 minutes, he got tired of hearing my name, rank, date of birth, and so he sent me back to my cell. But back there a couple of days, brought back in. And this is what I call a plant day. They had a dosure on me that I would say was better than what the Army Air Corps had. And I'll explain later where they got this information. But he started out then telling me about me. And every time he'd say, "Is that right?" I'd say, "Name, rank, serial number." That was it. And so he kept on going. Well, about halfway through this interrogation, another gent came in. And one of these friendly ho-ho guys, and he walked over and looked at the desk and said, "Oh, yeah, Ravenna, Ohio." He says, "I know that place." Well, no, have you lived there all your life? Name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. And so we went on, and he started telling me about his travels from New York to Chicago, which traveled through the town of Ravenna. And he started pointing out things about Ravenna. I knew most of them. But when he would ask me to clarify something, like he got name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. And so this went on, and I went back to the cell. And so a couple more days, I'm back in with the original interrogator. And he started out, "Well, Lieutenant Porter, if you are Lieutenant Porter, name, rank, serial number, and date of birth." He said, we're having quite a bit of difficulty. You're not being very cooperative. Name, rank, and serial number, date of birth. And so finally he said to me, he said, "Well, look," he said, "we're not getting very far with you. And we may have to turn you over to the Gestapo." Now, that was the German police, unfriendly fellers. And by this time, this was about about the 8th day there. And our rations were very thin. We got a piece of toast, a glass of this ersatz coffee in the morning, a small bowl of soup, and ersatz coffee and a piece of bread at noon, and in the evening, we were back to the bread and coffee again. Well, I was to the point where I really didn't care. And he's sitting there, finally after he threatened me with the Gestapo, I did it, pointed my finger at him. And he had one terrific scar down the side of his face. And I looked at him and I said, "If you turn me over to the Gestapo and I live through it, I'll be able to pick you out of all the Germans in Germany if you're still alive." Well, he went crazy. He jumped and he was spieling German there like all get out. He hit the buzzer on the desk and he's calling for the guard. And the guard came in and he gave him another bunch of German. Again, I didn't understand a single word of it. And out we go. Now, I didn't know whether I was going back to my cell or out to the firing squad. But I got back to my cell, and about a half hour later, they come and took me out of there, and away we went. But I was going over to another barracks where they were making the shipment out to the collecting point at Wetzlar, and then an assignment to a prison camp. I'm going to regress right here and tell you why I was in the interrogation center so long. Normally you're there only about 3 days. We had 11 people on that B-24. The normal crew of the 24 is 10. One of the bodies in the plane, I might add that 5 people didn't get out of the plane, but one of the bodies that didn't get out of the plane had every piece of government identification removed from all of his clothing, didn't have any dog tags, and so the Germans were very concerned about who is this? They were more concerned about who is he and what was he doing there than he was with the crew members. Well, he was a photographer sent up on a special mission since we were leaving the wing. He was to get good pictures. Well, he created problems for us, but I found that out later because Lieutenant Fisher, the navigator, his interrogator before he run him off, explained to him why he had been kept so long. He had been kept the same time. So this fella, I don't know what he was thinking about, but he had nothing. No dog tags, no nothing. So that held us up. We went to Wetzlar, which was a collecting point, and the pilot, he went to the Stalag Luft 1, which is up in Barth in northern Germany, and Fisher and I, we were assigned to the officers' camp Stalag Luft 3 out on the German-Polish border. The gunners, the 2 gunners, they went out to the gunners' prison camp, which is over in Poland. So off we go from there, and traveling. After seeing what some of those fighter pilots did with trains and things, we didn't like the idea of being on the train. But we made it. The weather was a little bit bad, so we got over there. Stalag Luft 3 was main camp for British and American officers. And when you arrive there, we found out they have security here too. The prisoner who arrives at the camp, he's just not welcome with open arms. He has to be identified by somebody within the camp who knew him before. Well, I was fortunate in that in the forelogger where they issued us our blanket, soup bowl, and spoon and fork and that, was a Marvin Dietzel. I'll never forget his name, because he saved me a lot of grief. He was from Youngstown, Ohio, and we had gone into the cadets at the same time. So when he finished issues, he vouched for me. I could vouch for the navigator, so we were in. We didn't get set off in the corner and nobody talked to us or anything. The camp was set up just like another installation, Army installation. We had our camp commander. Each one of the blocks where the prisoners were kept, that was, I would say, about like a company. Within that building, you had your rooms for the prisoners. They were set up in squads. I went into a room with 14 other people. It was pretty crowded, but we made out. We were on triple deck bunks. And well, the fight was for the top bunk, because after sit around there a while, that's where what little bit of heat the bodies generate, that's the warmest part of the room. Didn't realize that later. I got a bottom one. But the camp was set up, like I say, we had about 8,000 American flying officers and about 2,500 British flying officers. And there was no real contact between the sections. They were set up as north-south, east-west, and center compound. I was in the west compound. The set up in the camp there was, we received some German supplies, food supplies, and we got the Red Cross parcels that were sent in there by the Americans, the British, and some French. And it was surprising, some of the concoctions that these fellows had learned to mix up out of these rations. And since I was a newcomer, Fisher was also a newcomer, we didn't get to do anything on the food boards unless it was to set and keep burning the toast over and over again to dry it out a little bit. That's German black bread. But everything was going along good. They had been saving up for Thanksgiving. We had us a Thanksgiving dinner. It was really remarkable. I couldn't find a menu. I was going to bring it with me, but then we started planning for Christmas. Weather was getting bad, but they had morning and evening roll call, so we had to go out and stand in the open for roll call twice a day. I was physically excused from the roll call, so I didn't have to go out. I was counted in the room. In January, the weather's getting real bad, and things are moving. The Americans are moving on the west front, Russians are moving on the east front. And we were able to keep a pretty good idea of just where the forces were, due to the fact that the Germans never lost a city. They never lost an area. But we noticed that as they reported street fighting in a town, we ruled that as that's our area now. And that way we were able to keep up with them. The Russians moved into the east, on the east side there, and they got stopped at the Oder River, which was about 20 miles from our camp. The Germans held them there. That gave them time then to put us on the road. They did not want the Russians to liberate us, so we went on the road. In the middle of a blizzard, the temperature between 10 below and 10 above. Oh, I better correct that. That's centigrade, so that's centigrade is 0 is freezing. So we were right in that zone of mush and ice. So we walked out about 18 hours straight with one stop, and then they put us into a building that was a ceramic plant, and fortunately it was nice and warm, and pallets all around, so we get off the ground. And we didn't know what was going to happen there, but we stayed there for about 4 days. I made a first mistake after my arrival there. I took my shoes off and laid down, went to sleep, and I don't know how many hours later, I woke up, but my shoes didn't fit no more. My feet had swollen, so to go ahead to the restroom or anything, I went barefooted, or with somebody else's shoes. They moved us out of there, and we went into a motorized equipment yard, and was put in a building there. And we're now about 65 miles from the original camp, and still no idea what's going to happen to us. And we stayed overnight there, and then they took us down and loaded us up on freight cars, on the freight yard in Springburg. We had a few guards, but we didn't have enough for each one of the boxcars, 50 of us in a boxcar. Half the group would sit down, the other half of the group had to stand up, took turns. And our group, fortunately, we had a guard, and he would open the door and we'd get some fresh air. But the cars that did not have a guard, those doors were closed and locked from the outside, and they weren't opened again until we made another stop. It was really miserable. We moved on, and when we left Munich, they split the Saigon group into two groups. Part of the group went to Mooseburg, which is down very close to Munich. The other group went to Nuremberg, which was straight due west. I was with the group that went to Nuremberg. We ended up in a slave labor camp adjacent to the marshalling yard, which was forbidden by the Geneva Convention, but that was all they had. So we stayed there from in February to about 1st of April. But while we were there, I saw a show put on by the British and American bombers that was, well, let's call it unbelievable. And the night show was the one. The British used a mosquito bomber to set up the bombing courses for the bombers. He went along and he dropped a series of flares, yellow, 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 and red, green, and what have you, for the bombers to drop their bombs on those flares. Excuse me. We were out there watching this from the slip trenches we had dug. We'd taken the shutters off the windows and had them over your head to keep the falling shrapnel from hitting you. And we sat there, but we noticed that this line of flares was drifting right towards the prison camp. And we said, we're about ready to really dig another foot or two in this slip trench. And we ended up, here come the mosquito down through there again. He made what they call the no bomb line. In other words, it raced the first one and laid another one. And for about, I guess it was about, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, the British bombers came over in a trail, one at a time, and bombed that marshalling yard in that part of the city of Nuremberg. And, well, like I say, it was enjoyable. It was a real treat to see them operate. And the only thing was, we got the word the next morning to not be too rejoiced when the reconnaissance birds come over to see what damage was done, because British there had dropped a blockbuster, and unfortunately it hit right in the entrance to the largest air raid shelter in Nuremberg. The German people again were very unhappy, so we didn't hoot and holler when the reconnaissance boys come over. We stayed there then until Patton started in, and he was headed right for our camp at Nuremberg. And we said, well, we were timing him almost to the hour, but then he got changed of orders, and he was turned and went north for Berlin. I would say he passed within about 40 miles of us, but Patton was more interested in getting to Berlin. However, on the end of that month, 29th of April, we were sitting there. We knew that the American troops had turned and come some our way. And people from the 14th Armored Regiment of the 3rd Army came into the prison camp. We knew then we were liberated. Now we had sent out, when I say we, the command had sent out scouts the night before trying to contact the forward elements to let them know where we were, but they knew we were there, so we didn't have any worry about them shooting us up. The first thing in camp was a tank. He came through the front gate, busted it down, drove in maybe from here to the doors there, and he was swamped with prisoners. And some picture taken and all that. But the one thing, they had just been resupplied, and if you've seen pictures of tanks going into combat, after they're resupplied, they got those K rations and C rations and everything strapped all over that tank. That was a bare tank in less than a minute. And as a matter of fact, we saw one of the members of the tank crew 2 days later, and he come back and jokingly asked if we had any food left. But that was near the point. And then at that camp, one day we had German guards and Germans around, and the next day we had Americans, because there was 110,000 Allied prisoners of war in that camp. And they still had a war going on, and they didn't want a bunch of Crees, the term for a war prison, out running around the area and getting hurt. So they held us in there for a couple of days, and then they started lining us up back to France, and eventually back home. Take a couple notes here. Oh, at this Estalada 3, that was the camp that the British made the big escape from. This happened in the spring of '44. There were 76 Britishers got out that night. Of that group, 23 of them were returned to prison camp. 3 made it all the way, and 50 of them were done in by the SS troopers. In other words, they were executed. And it was at this time that there was talk of maybe turning all the prison camps over to the SS troops. Fortunately, that did not happen. And we stayed under the Air Force for the full stay. I didn't point that out at first. The Air Force took care of the Air Force, the Army took care of the Army. And even though one instant you're shooting at one another, there's a certain amount of esprit de corps amongst flyers. You know, you're a flyer, didn't care what kind of uniform. We're of a different breed, you know. So that was it, and I'm ready to take any questions that anybody might have. I'll do my best to answer.
Mooseburg.
What was your daily life like in the prison camp? What did you do to keep busy? Did they work you?
Okay, very good question. We had different duties within our combines, and with the exception of just trying to make it through, we had jobs to do now. They had set up what they called the force, and that was groups were assigned specific duties in the event that it all breaks loose in the camp. And like our room commander, his duty wasn't with only, I think, 2 other members in the room, but he was to have a squad of about 10 people, and their job was to rush the guard tower. In other words, take the guard tower out, because he had a little 30 caliber machine gun there. But if he gets a bunch of people headed for his tower, and they're all heading at the same time for all the towers, it becomes very confusing. And hopefully, they would not do too much damage. I was given a specific job to work on maps. I didn't do a whole lot, because right after the Great Escape, Hitler issued the warning any prisoner of war who has been captured and cataloged and escapes can be executed when he's picked up. And so that kind of slowed down any thoughts about mass escapes, and plus the fact that the news was going so good that, you know, it's going to be over soon. A lot of us with the wishes it was going to be over by Christmas, but we didn't quite like that. But that was the duties. Now we had instruments, musical instruments from the YMCA, and believe it or not, we had a real good band there in our compound. We had a fair library, and it was associated or located right next to the cookhouse. And if you could get over there in time to get a seat, you could get a little bit warm for a while. There was no heat in the barracks hardly. So that was one place that was really warm, but crowds or anything adjacent to the cookhouse. Right? Anybody else?
When you came back to the U.S., where did you land? When you came back to the U.S., where did you land in the first place?
Boston, Massachusetts. We about capsized our ship. We had a real roar. We started out of Le Havre, France, in a convoy because they still had not accounted for all the all the German submarines. As soon as they accounted for the last submarine, they told the ship captains, take off, go home. Well, our ship was a concrete ship, converted refrigeration job, and it made a good 6 knots. So needless to say, everybody beat us home. And when we got to Boston, we had a welcoming committee. 6 waves walked down the pier, and it took the captain a good 45 minutes to an hour to get the troops spread out so his ship would right so he could put it to distance. So that was our greeting coming back. But we were just happy to be here.
What happened to the prison guards?
Pardon?
What happened to the prison guards?
The prison guards, well, they were all taken prisoner, and by the Americans. However, I'm sorry to say that one, he didn't make it. They found him later. But I don't know who did it, but this one was we call him the chipper. He had a chip on his shoulder. He hated Yanks, he hated British, and any time he could make it miserable, he did. And like I say, he didn't make it. But that was another good feature too. The day that we were liberated, we had more Germans of every make and description at the prison camp. Because that way they didn't get shot. We just got picked up and taken off to another prison camp. So that was it. There was nothing to know. I don't know where they went, but I know they were picked up or hurt. I will point out on one prison guard, when we started out of Saigon in that blizzard, we had this one prison guard who must have been, at that time, way past retirement age, and we called him Pop. Well, Pop was good for about 50 yards, and then he had to pick him up. And the prisoners got tired of picking Pops up, so here's the next thing you see. There's 2 prisoners, one's carrying his pack, the other one's carrying his rifle, and they got him in between them. And the next little town we went through, first night that had any, or house that had any lights on, they knocked on the door, and when they answered the door, they gave him Pops in his pack. And we never knew what happened to him. It was a kind of a forced desertion. But we lost 2 horses and 1 dog on that trip.
During the course of your talk, mentioned that your interrogators have got a considerable amount of intelligence on you. We're wondering how they got that intelligence.
The main thing is they're traveling and they're working in the States, because there was agents within the States right along. Newspapers. Now, I come from a little town of about 10,000 people, and well, I thought it was great, but every time I turned around, there was an article in the paper. And so all I had to do was have somebody picking it out of the paper, and it was very accurate, too. Extremely accurate.
Do you think this nation has the will or the wherewithal to conduct another war on the scale of World War II? Just your thoughts on it.
Well, I have one comment on that. I went through World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and I hate to say it, but the day somebody wants me to go out and find an enemy and shoot him, and he don't wear a uniform, that's the day I don't want to be in the field. And I think the present day shooting that's going on has a good reason, but the odds are really stacked against us. I hope that satisfies that.
Were your parents notified that you were a POW?
Yes, it was very good. The first thing that the Germans did was take one of our dog tags and turn them over to the Red Cross. And it was 3 weeks after I went down, my folks were notified that I was missing in action. 3 weeks after that, they reported I was a prisoner of war. Now, as again, there's a two-way street. Until I landed in Boston, I had no information on any of my family from the middle of August the previous year. So I was pretty near 10 months. I had no knowledge of whether I still had a family, if they're all there or what. The notification of families of missing in action and prisoners of war was very good.
You fellows became ill, what did they do? What kind of medical care was available to you?
Medical care, they had some captured doctors. Now, I mentioned before I didn't have to stand a belt because I had this ear drum rupture. And in January, this happened in October, but in January, a Norwegian doctor removed some scab tissue and stuff from my ear, and I did get back partial care. But that is the only one that I had contact with, was just this Norwegian doctor. But the hospital was set up strictly as like a clinic. If you had major hospital requirements, they sent you to a German hospital.
When you returned from being in the POW camp, did you still serve in the Air Force?
Sorry.
Did you still serve in the Air Force
Yes.
after you were a POW?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
How long?
Oh, I did 28 years. I went through 66 combat missions into Korea, and then when our unit was going to jets, they wouldn't let me fly jets because of the problems. And so then I went and started working on the ground. But no, I stayed with the Air Force. Matter of fact, when we go out now and they have the song presentation, I'm one of the few that can stand up for both the Army and the Air Force. But like I say, I feel a real privilege to come and talk to you folks, because it isn't going to be many years, and we ain't going to be around. And if you want any information, you're going to have to find a book or something to get it. And I thank you.